Okay, welcome very, very much to Conversations. The guest for this program is Randolph Corbett, and he is a mortgage fraud victim, which is his title that we got up for him. We're going to be talking about that, and Randolph, welcome so much to Manhattan Network and to Conversations.
Pleasure seeing you, Harold.
Share with us your background, a little born and raised and educated a little bit, and then we want to talk about your specific situation vis-a-vis the fraud issue, of the mortgage issue. But could you share your own background a little bit, please?
I was born and raised in Brooklyn. I went to school at the Old Boys High School. I went into the service. I came back from the service. I went to college. I got my degree, which we used to call the College of Staten Island. I mean, Richmond College. Now it's called the College of Staten Island.
Okay. Which branch of the Army were you?
I was in the Army.
Army. Were you enlisted, or did
I enlisted,
you enlist?
but I was fortunate in that at the time I went in 1964, they were just beginning to draft everyone for Vietnam. So since I enlisted, I was sent to Korea, and just about everybody else I know went to Vietnam.
Yeah, I was drafted. I'm older. I was drafted in the time of the Korean. They were drafting then, and I couldn't get out of it. I had to go in the Army. I did not like the Army at all.
I served in the Army, and I was in Korea.
Well, I fortunately was sent to Puerto Rico, where I got on a swimming team, so it was what they called good duty. But I didn't like the Army. I was always getting what they called Article 15. For being a smart ass.
I had my share of picking up cigarettes, picking up cigarette butts, and cleaning the bathroom with toothbrushes. You know,
it's very authoritarian. Yeah. I don't like authoritarian, which is a bad world to be brought up in, because all our institutions are authoritarian, are they not?
Absolutely, and it's designed, it's designed to suppress the free will of people, to make you conform.
They think that's what they want, compliant people who will do what they're told. And Senior Vice President says jump, everybody jumps, and it's all down the line, you know. But anyway, I mean, in corporate America. Anyway, you went to there, and you went to the college. What did you study in college?
Sociology and economics.
Okay, economics. You did some economics,
right? That was my minor.
You still keep up with that?
And I don't study, but I certainly read a lot about it.
Would you have ever been part of the people who are arguing on the big patent, Keynes and Schumpeter and all that? Did you get into theoretical economics or Marx?
I think what the major problem that I've always found with definitions is that they don't always one size fit all. Right. And you can't explain everything because they're bits and pieces of each one.
Yeah, that's very hard. You have to fit that into a theoretical framework.
And then if you're not right, then everybody else is wrong. But that's not the world function, you know. We take a bit of this and a bit of that, and that's how the world coalesces around one another. Yeah,
in real life.
In real life.
But the institutions are set up that way.
Well, that's because the institutions have something a vested interest in protecting, because they get their money based on what they're supposed to be doing and doing for society, not necessarily for the good of society, but the good of the institutions and the people who supply the money to them.
Yeah, right. And that's a different model than the normal life in which one leads with a real human being.
Yeah, it's absolutely right.
It's really out of sync with one of the, you know, they're out of sync, it seems to me, with the institutional assumptions we've inherited with what the future allows in a new kind of way, and also requires, maybe, if we don't just sort of blow the whole thing up. Well, if they don't have a vision.
I don't think it's so much that they have a vision.
Or they don't have a vision.
Right, they don't have a vision.
An adequate vision to the future.
Their idea is to keep on making money. And it's not about a vision as much as a practice.
It's practical.
You know? So if I can exploit you into the point that, like the young man, I don't know if you know, there was a gentleman in Ohio who had a toothache. And it became very infected, and he died. Wow! And because he didn't have medical insurance. That's a crime. And some people were saying, well, it's a good thing, because if he doesn't have it, he deserves to die. Yeah. Are you telling me a young person deserves to die, yet I can put $1 million in a missile to kill 4 or 5 people?
Right. A predator.
That's part of the psyche of what's going on here.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, we viewed leaders as honorable and very respected people. And most of us were taught to respect authority. Okay? But now people are beginning to look at the individuals who occupy those positions of authority and saying, you're not a very honorable person, regardless of your title. And we no longer feel that you should be in that position.
And also that systemically, the institutions structurally don't and can't serve.
Right.
There's a systemic problem.
Okay.
That is, you know, I think.
Yes,
you know?
Because it's designed that the assets are to accumulate to the top and to shut off and exclude everybody else. So if you're not part of that accumulating system, then you have no value. You know, once upon a time, we are now in a society that's racing towards the time and place where we're saying to ourselves, I would like to just lay on the beach again and put my feet in the water, whereas opposed to the guy saying, you're 2 minutes late, I'm going to dock you. Society is trying to say, no, this is not what society is supposed to be. We're not physical machines. We're human beings. But we have allowed ourselves to buy into the concept that we are part of a machine, and the goal is to generate profits.
Right. For those who own the assets.
Because they're the ones,
which is a little tiny plutocratic class.
But they're the ones who run the institutions,
and
therefore the institutions are paid to continue to perpetuate their concept.
Right, they're like serfs on a feudal estate. Everything's owned by the Lord, and they get all the benefit, and they're seen like serfs. Or we had chattel slavery, did we not? You know,
we still do. I mean, we call it wage slavery now. We call it wage slavery, you know, or debt slavery because of what they've done to so many thousands of
people
students.
come out of colleges with huge debts now. I had no debt when I came out of college. Well, we had the GI Bill.
I went to college under the GI Bill. You know, and the whole idea that what was important was that when we got out of college and we went into society and got a job, we then began to contribute to society. We could buy goods and services. So therefore, our employment kind of helped the society roll along. But now when you get out of college and you $40,000 a day, you cannot go out and buy.
That's right. And
so
also,
the society, which normally every couple of years, every year another boost, it stopped.
I know. And the tuition's gone up really magnificent. I mean, huge. I saw some people there was a woman, I forget her name, she's a BBC presenter on the BBC regular. She said she's not going to send her kid to college because she's going to go to Britain because the costs are so high.
Well,
just saddling with huge debt. That was a major figure in society.
Okay, but another thing is, why are we all being forced to go to college?
Well, the rationale for
the rationale was back in the 50s that if you went to college, therefore you were going to be more productive and you were going to move ahead.
Well,
so many people I mean, we're not talking about an aesthetic aspect of the educational aspect.
Well, there is that. Some people you go to college so that you can learn, enlighten your mind and learn and become a good citizen and knowledgeable and everything. Okay, but that's gone by the wayside.
Yes, because now you can go to college and spend 4 years there and not have any more greater understanding of the world that we live in than you did when you went into school. And we know plenty of people who've gotten out of college with degrees who have no more understanding than they did when they went in. You can buy degrees on the internet. You have stories, for example, here in New Jersey, we had a story of I believe it was a captain who had no degree, and he was over all his men who had degrees, and he was less educated than them. There was a big turmoil in there because the concept of a degree meant you were supposed to be more enlightened. But the value of a person, just because you're a person and your ability, was not compared to those who had a degree.
And there's all these changes going on. The father, the godfather of public access, this facility, is a man, I'm not sure if you've met him, a wonderful gentleman. He's in his 90s now, alert as attack. His name is George Stoney.
I never met him.
A beautiful guy and a great filmmaker. He must be in his 90s now. And he's just really alert. And we did a program 2 or 3 or 4 years ago with him, and he was complaining. He's been teaching filmmaking at NYU for decades, and he made great films himself when it was just film, before there was any video or anything. But he said he's getting so upset because the students are coming in, the younger people are coming in, the first thing they ask him and the thing they're concerned about, what do I have to do? It's outer-directed. What do I have to do to get an A in this class? I've got to get into Harvard Business School so that I can get a degree and make a lot of money. And that seems to be the only thing that they're there for. And they have comparisons about if you get a degree, then you make more money.
Yes.
And it's all about the money, is it not? It seems.
Okay, but the thing is that
it's not about learning.
They once upon a time valued the independent entrepreneurial spirit, and that's what they said Americans had, was going to push push us forward. That independent guy who's out there tinkering in the garage and making things, that was the spirit. Now all of a sudden they flipped it around and said, oh no, you go to college and you get a degree and you be the guy making money. Never mind this guy is out there. The economy is driving America schizophrenic. And people are now saying, do I need to get a degree to make a living?
I think there's going to be less of it. Yeah, but they link it to, but it's linked, that's why you go to, it's all linked to money.
Yes.
I mean, to an inordinate degree. And thank goodness we got this Occupy Wall Street and other kinds of things where they're questioning, and there are larger issues that are behind that. Like we have now, the internet, we can educate ourselves. You can have access to all kinds of information on your own. You don't have to listen to some guy ego tripping, but it's an authority figure to which you answer, like the drill sergeant.
Yes.
That's what they're doing.
Yes.
And they're laying out a thing, and you'd better do it just the way I say, and it's like a military model, and it's characteristic of corporate. The senior vice president says jump, everybody jumps.
Yes.
And then they answer, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but the whole point is that many times these individuals who are in those positions have gotten there because of who they know, not what they know.
Well, that's why you go to Harvard, because you get a Rolodex.
You know?
And they're going to be on Wall Street and you can make money. And that's why you go there, for the social context. And the ones that are going to be on Wall Street in big partnerships and law firms and things like that.
Okay,
and work and reify the system that's outdated.
Okay, but the idea was that when you went to Wall Street, you went there and you learned and you made a lot of money because of your ability.
Yeah.
The truth is coming out. You went to Wall Street and got there because there was a lot of theft going on that was not held accountable for.
There are a lot of foxes wanting into that hen coop.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's not enough people watching the foxes. And maybe there should be. And there's examples of that. We're going to be talking about mortgage fraud.
Yes.
And we're going to be talking about the banks and so forth. And you have some personal experience along those lines.
Yes.
I wonder if maybe you could share that with us as a way to wade into this mortgage issue.
Okay, I'd gladly. First off, let me say that when I got induced into this scam, my property was completely paid off.
Your property, share it out. What property are you talking about?
It's the address is 289 Herkimer Street, Brooklyn.
It's a house,
it was a 3-family house.
Okay.
3-story.
A 3-story.
Right. With a basement and a very nice large yard.
Yeah, right. So a nice property.
I bought it from my parents, who sold it to me when they were buying another house. So
I see.
So I had the house, and between my parents owned it and I owned it. We were in the neighborhood 50 years.
Did you get any help doing that from GI Bill or GI?
No.
Okay,
I got strictly from earnings.
Yeah, okay.
And I got induced to take this loan because I got home one day and there was a bill allegedly from the New York City Department of Taxation saying, you were $38,000 in debt. Now, to me...
Back taxes they're claiming? Yeah, okay.
Okay, now to me that was impossible because I've been working, I had no debts, no other debts, no credit cards, no nothing, no debts.
Right.
So I immediately began to look for places to get a loan to pay it off because I had a small business at the same time.
Okay.
So I figured I could get the loan, then I could get some money, pay off the bills, and take the money invested in the business, and I would keep things rolling. So after I...
How had that tax bill built up to such a high amount?
I have no idea.
You had not paid attention to the taxes?
My wife was taking care of all our household bills.
And had she gone away or something? Or?
Well, after the 1998, we split up.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah, right.
So,
that would be.
So the loan was induced in 1997, so 1998 we split up. But the biggest part about it is turned out to be a fraud. It was no actual loan. There were no legal documents. The whole intent was to get me into believing because they do things. For example, we were driven out to a place in Westchester.
Now, this is the bank that holds the mortgage?
Yeah, the alleged mortgage now.
Alleged mortgage. Okay, thank you. Yeah,
so we go out there and we sign what I thought were closing documents. See, I had never been involved in real estate before other than to purchase from my parents.
Did you have a lawyer or not helping you with that or an agent?
Wait, let me tell you.
Yeah.
When I got my house from my parents,
they
held the mortgage, meaning we didn't go to the bank and get the money and give it to her. They held the mortgage and they said, you just make the payments and all payments will be made to us, so therefore...
And those were all current?
Oh yes,
yeah,
yes,
that was
yes,
current.
Yes,
it was
yes,
the taxes
yes.
that you had kept
It was
track
paid
of.
off. The house was paid off.
Oh,
so
it was all paid off.
The house was paid off.
Wow.
And therefore,
that'd be a valuable property. Yeah.
So therefore, I became a target, and I didn't realize
because of the taxes.
No, because of the property.
Oh, okay. Yeah, spell it out. Go
okay,
ahead,
they wanted the property, and I didn't realize they wanted the property. It's how they created this phony debt. So now I go out to the place, and they tell me, we have researched your credit history, and now we found out that there's an additional $7,300 that you owe. It's about $7,000.
On the mortgage?
No, on a debt.
On a debt that
they
you
said
had.
It from 1988.
What was that about?
It was about a car that I had gotten in 1988 that was paid off, but the thing that we're looking for is we're looking for a legal answer in a criminal enterprise.
Okay.
So all the pieces do not actually fit that should fit.
Right.
So anyway, to make a long story short, I paid them off. I came down, after I got the money, I figured I would be able to turn around and put it into my business.
Sure.
Okay? 1 week after I got the money, all the businesses that I was doing business with for 14 years stopped selling me merchandise.
Why?
Tell me, Harold.
Do you think there was the fix?
No think about it.
You think there was no?
Yes,
there was a fix.
There was the definite link to the fact that if you cannot generate income, you will be in debt, and ultimately you'll be forced.
No, but the people you were doing business with were not doing business, or I don't know what business you were in.
I was selling ladies' clothing.
Ladies' clothing, and you're.
But you got to understand that the powers to be are all connected.
Yeah. Okay.
They're all connected
to their advantage.
So John says to Harry, "Listen, call him, tell him don't sell nothing to Mr. Corbett."
Can you verify that?
You can never verify.
You cannot verify.
You can never verify.
You're saying there's no doubt about it. That was the case.
After 14 years, people know you by first name.
Yeah,
you go there and you buzz the bell, and you're invited right into the president's office, and you sit down and you talk.
Yeah, gotcha.
You're well known.
Yeah,
okay?
right.
I was well known.
And you had a good rep and everything.
From the Empire, from the World Trade Center.
Yeah.
All the way up to 125th Street.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
East side, west side, all the city buildings, state, federal, probation, correction, the parks, the post office. Everybody knew the name of Randy Corbett Enterprise.
Right.
So they were able to put me out of business just like that.
Wow.
So now I'm down to just the money that I have from the alleged loan. And it just runs out.
Yeah, sure.
So ultimately, my wife shows back up into the picture and she says, listen, the only way that you can save the property is transfer to a relative. Now, not knowing anything about it, I'm caught with battling home situation. I'm losing my house. I'm out of business. I figured I'm going to try to hold on to this for my kids. So I signed off. Ultimately, within a year, they sold the property, and I was out on the street.
Oh my God, how horrible!
I lived on the E train for 5 years.
Good grief!
And
homeless.
Yes, and for those 5 years, I would sleep on the train at night. I'd get up at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'd go over to the Parks Department facility on 25th Street. I would shower, change my clothes, put them in a storage locker, and then head to the law library to study the law. And
you've studied intensely?
For 10 solid years.
Okay, so you know a lot of what you taught.
Yes. So
and you were trying to understand what the hell was this about.
I had no idea. And first of all, you have no idea what the mortgage situation is. And second of all, you have no idea what the law is pertaining to that.
Yeah, and I've heard you use the word fraud.
Yes.
Okay, so that's an important word in legal terminology, is it not?
Absolutely. Because the issue with it is, what was the fraud? The fraud was that there was never a legitimate loan ever made to me.
Are you talking about a loan, or are you talking about a mortgage?
Mortgage, loans, they're interchangeable.
Okay.
There was no, because one of the first things that happens when you go to a mortgage, you have to assign a document that's called an O3. The law says without the O3, there is no mortgage.
What's an O3?
It's a form. It's a form that you have to
It's a standard form that real estate people would be familiar with.
If you know anybody, you ask them, what's the O3?
O3, they know. Okay.
Just like that.
Right. Okay.
So without that document being signed by you, there is no loan.
And there was no such document in your negotiation?
Ever.
Okay.
Ever.
What was there that made it? What was
Because when I went there, I was given a document that looked like the O3, and I signed it. okay, thinking that I was getting a mortgage. But ultimately, when I began to research and demand,
and you put your house was up as collateral.
That's what I thought, because I thought, give me the money.
You had a house free and clear.
Give me the money.
That's a great asset. That must have been worth lots of money. I mean,
$750,000.
That's a lot of money.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, right. And it was paid for. You were you were
it was
current.
Mine and my 3 daughters and I and my wife lived there for 30 solid years. They went to college and everything. And
did you have anybody read the fine print, or did you read the fine print? Were you able to read the fine print? Okay.
It didn't matter. You were in a criminal enterprise, regardless what the documents were going to say.
That was a bank giving you the loan.
It was a company called
criminal
FHB. One of those lending companies that are all dotted throughout Long Island and Westchester and everywhere.
What is their function? Where do they fit in?
They were a mortgage broker company.
Okay.
So they were supposed to make third-party loans.
Oh, third-party loans,
meaning between you and I, they get the money from somebody else.
Is that getting from a bank? Is a bank involved, or where do they get the money? Or I'm sorry, I'm so innocent.
No. They generally get money. They have assets of their own.
Okay.
Or they are, as brokers, can call what's called third-party lenders, who will make the money available to them to allegedly make it available to you.
And for that, you put your house up knowingly that the house was being done as collateral?
Yes,
because for the payment of that debt?
You figure
you're going to get ahead.
Little time, no. I used to work 7 days a week.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Right. Yeah,
I knew well over 2,000 women.
Yeah.
I knew that they get paid every Friday. Yeah. So I would get a beautiful suit on Monday morning, and by the end of the week, I've gone to 100 women.
I don't understand what you mean, women. I don't understand what you mean.
Women, the other half of men, women.
No, but I don't understand. They were employed?
Yes, at all the places. You would go to their place of employment, and you show them a garment. And they would,
so you were brokering clothing, women's clothing?
I was an independent distributor.
Okay, that's what you meant, that those were customers for the products that you were brokering.
That I was selling.
Yeah,
so if you go by the end of the week and you get 100 women buying
100 dresses,
50, 60 suits at $50, $60.
Yeah.
You could pay your mortgage, especially if you had no other debts.
Right, and that's the business you were in that dried up overnight?
Just like that.
Isn't that something?
Well, that's part of the system where you have to understand that those who are in control have friends in control in other things. So they can call a friend and you can be out today.
And
but let me tell you the rest of the
Okay, so now, why would they stop doing business with you? And what way would the third party bottom feeder, or whatever you want to call it, have to the people who were going to buy your product and had been doing business with you honorably?
They had nothing.
Well, how did it happen that it dried up? Was it a recession or something happened?
No. Listen,
who was putting the pressure on them not to deal with you?
You would have no way of knowing that.
Okay, yeah.
But to tell you the truth, today, when I go down there, I went down to 1407 Broadway.
Where that is?
That's in Manhattan.
But where in Manhattan?
That's on 42nd Street.
Oh, right in the middle of Times Square.
It's a big building that has hundreds of little manufacturer reps.
Right, okay. Yeah.
I was there yesterday.
Clothing.
Yes.
Okay, you're right.
And I ran into 5 guys who said, "Randy, what are you doing?"
Yeah.
Still knew me.
From the old days.
My personal still knew me. How are you doing? That's how well I had been known down there.
Yeah.
So after that dried up, but here's where the interesting part.
Yeah.
Remember what I told you? They said that I had $7,000.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that $7,000 was allegedly part of the mortgage closing. Okay.
Mortgage closing.
You know when you go to the mortgage and they pay off they're supposed to pay off all the debt. So I figured after you pay off all my debt, what's left is mine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So I'm assuming that all my debts are paid and I'm going to use that money. Okay. But the money dried up.
Okay. And you also had this tax issue. Did that come later?
That was part of what they paid off.
Okay.
So now.
But that had been $40,000. You said.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So now that's paid off. Yeah. So I'm down. Out of my building, and I'm living in the basement of a friend's house. Go to the bank, and my bank account is frozen.
Oh, good grief.
Saying that I owed the car owner, $4,000.
From before?
Yeah, and I'm saying, wait a minute. You took $7,000 at the closing to pay off all those debts.
Oh.
Okay? So how can you come in here now saying I still owe you $4,000?
Right. That should have been paid.
Okay, but to make to make the bottom, the story comes closer and faster.
Yeah.
I started researching all their documents.
You've been in the law library.
Okay. Now I go to the court.
Yeah.
And I'm searching all the documents.
Yeah.
Turn out all the documents are fake.
The documents are
Every
fake.
document from the court is
that pertain to you?
Yes, because what they did was, I went to the court to get my information, because if, let's say, someone sues you, there's a file in civil court that has your name on, and you could just go there and you can put the index number and they'll give you. So I get the index number, and I look into the index number, and I take the document, and I put the index number into the computer.
Right.
Not Randolph Corbett shows up, somebody else.
Well, how the hell can that happen?
It can't.
Okay.
They created all the phony documents to make me believe that it was a legitimate debt.
Good grief.
And I'm telling you, next time we get together, I would like to bring you my whole folder and show you all the documents, how that thick, that they created to make me believe that they had a legitimate debt.
On that automobile you're talking?
Yes.
Yeah, but the tax was another matter from the state.
Yeah, that was taken care of in the alleged closing.
Okay.
Okay. Now.
But the closing is when you transfer real estate property. You had a house that you owned, your family house.
Yeah, and I was taking a loan, basically taking a loan on that house.
The equity. A second loan, maybe.
No.
No, not a second. Okay, right.
Okay. Nothing. That would be the first mortgage, technically, if it were in fact
I got
a mortgage.
You. Okay, sorry. I'm not very familiar.
No, please, that's okay. I wasn't very familiar either, Harold.
But this thing about there's forged documents and that can be shown and proved?
Yes.
Have you been able to do that?
And listen, I represented myself in civil court, state court, and federal court. And each step of the way produced documents to show the fraud, and never got any resolution.
Did you do that with a lawyer or pro se?
No, representing myself.
Okay.
And I'm here to say that if you go to court and you represent yourself, even though you have every piece of a document in order.
And have educated yourself at the law library.
And you know all the procedures.
You have friends, lawyers who are giving you some advice and stuff?
Yes, there were people who would not, they would not technically do it, but I could simply ask them, well, listen, I'm at this point.
So now, you educated yourself seriously?
Yes, and not only that, I could ask them, look, we're going to go into what's called discovery. Discovery is when you ask for the documents from both sides.
Right.
So he'll say, well, listen, this is what you should ask for. So I would sit down and type it up.
So you were tutored?
Yes.
Essentially. That's what they do at Cambridge and Harvard.
Yes.
I mean,
at all law schools, because they really got to tell you because you don't know.
Yeah, so you got the education from people that are knowledgeable.
Yes, and all the documents are fake. And the thing that's about it is that
when you showed that to some of your lawyer friends,
let me tell you what a lawyer friend said to me, okay?
Yeah.
I'm in federal court.
Yeah.
And he happens to be there on another case.
Okay.
And I open it up and I show him. And see, when you have an index number, and you put it into a computer, when you're in court, the judge has a computer sitting on his desk.
Okay,
so
nowadays,
he could put it right there, punch in the number, and he'd get the whole facts and the history of the case.
Yeah.
So if you would put that index number in, you would see that there was no case for
And people can fiddle with those records? People can fiddle with those?
Yes, they can.
There's not a system of vouchsafing the integrity of what's being submitted?
I have documents. Let me give you an example.
Yeah,
where,
please.
In the Brooklyn Supreme Court.
Yes.
Okay. So I file what's called a summons and complaint, telling them that's the first step in it. You file a summons and complaint, and the summons tells you got to come to court to answer Mr. Corbett's charges. Okay. Now, the first thing that they did was they sent a motion to dismiss the whole thing. Okay.
They being
one of the defendants.
One of the defendants.
Send a motion to dismiss.
Yeah,
okay?
they would try. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but the law says that if I serve you with a summons and complaint, you have exactly 20 days to put that motion into the court. Okay. They slept on it thinking that I did not know that.
You mean the motion to dismiss?
To dismiss.
Yeah,
has to be put in.
And they did not?
And they did not.
Well, then that's a untimely thing.
Yes. Okay, but let me tell you what happened.
What happened?
So now, when they sent it to me, I answered it, and I said to the judge, their motion to dismiss must be denied based on the fact that they failed to meet the 20-day time limit.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah. They'll hold you to that if the system will, yeah.
However, when you go back down there, you'll find that the date that they answered was beyond the 20 days. When I put my answer into their motion, the next time I went down to the court, the date on their thing had been changed so that they were within compliance.
Wait a minute, that's like fiddling with election returns.
I'm telling you, that's what you're
That was done cyber? That change was made
at the court level.
Yeah.
By a clerk.
Is that open source where anybody can change things according to what? Isn't there some way to vouchsafe the integrity of the information in the law library?
Because it's stamped.
Okay.
It's stamped when it's submitted to the court. Yeah. It's stamped.
Well, that sure smells like, how do you spell fraud? F-R-A-U-D, is that it?
How do you spell conspiracy?
Conspiracy is even larger beyond fraud. Yeah, conspiracy to commit fraud. Yeah.
Okay, and the issue is, well, how can you get a date change that's in your interest and against the plaintiff? Because as a pro se litigant, you're up against a huge institution.
Right, in the bar association.
Okay, and you have to remember, you're there one time. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. These lawyers come in there frequently.
They're all the time. That's their home territory.
That's their home territory.
That's their hen coop.
And therefore, there's also understood that those employees who do not go along may find themselves in problems.
Wow, it's a big conspiratorial thing you're suggesting. Or alleging, or proving.
Okay. Yeah. The problem is that the system is geared towards the rich. Okay. And one of my defendants was a well-known bank. Yeah. One of them was a law firm that I personally was suing because of the fraud. A city marshal, a bank manager, and who you think they're going to let one little guy bring down all these people?
Well, there is the David and Goliath metaphor and that kind of thing, and there are people who do things of that nature to call into account the inappropriateness of the system. Hasn't it always been there's been some people who are in charge, and it's the old boys club?
Always.
And they are at the top, and they scratch each other's back. They go to the same schools. They go to the same prep schools. They know each other, and they back each other up. And they make sure that they and their group get all the goodies, and they don't care about the masses of the people.
That's because the masses have not held them accountable.
Okay, or been able to?
Well, I think in many cases you.
What about the fact that those people who have all that money in a world where money talks can buy the politicians by putting unlimited donations into their pockets? So if you get to a political level, that thing is also closed.
Okay, but we also must understand that the money that they have is our money that we gave to them. So we must redirect our money away from them and their institutions and support them.
Clarence Darrow for the defense. You know, I was raised on that book. My daddy were a lawyer, right? Yes. You know what I mean? So there's something for the defense, and that's what you're trying to, in a sense, encourage.
Yes.
That there should be, and I take it you would look favorably upon the Occupy Wall Street movement.
I've been there many times.
Let me just show you. Let me just show something, if you don't mind.
No, of course not.
This is the current issue of the Person of the Year, ladies and gentlemen. Let's prominently display it, okay? But as we do it, this is the time. No, it takes a minute for them to get in. Give them a second. Okay, they'll come in unfocused. And that's the Person of the Year. It's unlike the corporations that are called a person with Citizens United and all that, which is being called now. Move to Amend is now getting real traction. But anyway, this is the Person of the Year, and what this movement is, it's overlooked largely by the vested interest, the news, and so forth. But it's growing all over the world, is it not?
Yes.
It's growing and it's coming. And I said, as being an older, this is very interesting that even the established press is starting to see that. I'm glad that I lived long enough to see something questioning the system and and systems, and they're going horizontal. They're going out to look at not just one issue or one 30% break for them and all that. They're looking at it systemically, and that's what's needed, a systemic, critical look at the whole system and questioning the rationale by which that system operates to the benefit of so very few people at the top of society against the interests of 99% of the population.
Yes, but we also.
I'm glad I lived long enough to have something like that come.
Harold,
I've been hoping for that all my life.
The people who stole the houses are also the people who are trying to poison the water through the fracking.
With the fracking, yeah.
They're also the people who are involved in, I don't know if you know that the fluoridation that they have that's in the toothpaste is a byproduct of cleaning out the fertilizer vats. And the law says that if this this end product if it comes out as an end product, it's regulated. But if I can take it and roll it into another product, it's not regulated.
There's ways to
so all the byproduct of the cleaning of the fertilizer vat is dumped in our water as a fluoride. Now that is something.
Don't they do fluoride for it? Doesn't it stop cavities or something?
Read, Harold, I'm telling you, it's a poison. There are people who have died from fluoride, and they're continuing to dump it into our water.
Right. That's That's an issue.
That's another issue.
That's an issue.
But
yeah,
we must bring all these issues together.
But this question of the financial system and the thing that so impinges upon everyone's life in a world where everybody's interested in that money, and it is very concentrated, and you notice that the wealth is so concentrated in the United States of America, and the United States of America model is one that's been adopted by the world in large measure, and the institutions that have been there. It's more concentrated, the wealth in the United States of America now than it was in 1789 France, when they stormed the Bastille and made a revolution.
Our storm is coming.
You think it is?
I definitely think it is.
Because it's systemically inadequate. And also there's been a great deal of manipulation of mortgage documents that were lost. Hundreds of thousands of them.
Fake documents. That's the part people need to
Well,
understand.
fake documents would be something else again, but I also hear you using the word fraud.
Yeah.
They passed on, you know, when Paulson came in September 20 of 2008 with the 3 pages. Hey, everybody has to pass this to Congress in this week and sign or the whole world's going to fall apart, the financial world.
Wasn't true.
And they bailed them all out and everything like that. But in that thing, a lot of documents were being done that were out of the historical pattern required, let's say, a proprietary lease or stock certificates, pieces of paper that are needed in order for those people to come and have a position or a standing within the court.
Yes.
Historically, everyone's always assumed they've had their papers in order. Massively, those who were not displayed, they were just cyber things that were transferred, and they don't have the papers that give them the authority under law to come to somebody and say, you have to pay us because we've got this note. They don't have what they need to have a position. Is that not something that's widely part of the system now?
Absolutely.
And could be addressed and has to be addressed?
It has to be addressed because one of the issues that when you get a mortgage, you get 2 parts. You get a
mortgage or a loan if it were a co-op.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or and the note. Now, what we're finding out happened was that once these guys got their hands on the note, they sold it to someone else.
Well,
okay, but Howard, understand this. It's like you have a car, okay, and you want to give it to me, okay? So you give it to me and I pay you, right? Yeah. So I take the car and I give it to someone else and I pay them. But you never signed the registration, so it meant I never owned the car. And that's what was happening. The banks never
like
endorsed
a change
the note.
of ownership of a car with mortgage.
Yes.
Loans for co-ops.
Yes. So if I didn't sign the mortgage note over to you, you have no legal standing.
So that's a piece of paper that many instances, unlike history, Tom Joad, remember the Depression?
Yeah.
And everybody coming up and they would sell their children anything to make those payments because they're going to foreclose on you.
Yes.
And they could, and they had their papers in order.
And they
because it was a relatively small thing. Everybody had to say they had their papers in order. They had the legitimate under the system. Now they don't have their papers in order, and they're still trying to.
No, not still trying. They're still being allowed to take people out of their property, even though they cannot prove that they ever owned the note.
No, okay, the note they don't have. It did exist at one point and went through various hands, but it got lost.
But okay, but how?
But they don't have it. But why are there not citizens able to assert that thing? Show me the note that gives you the authority.
It's been.
Okay, is that happening? Are there citizens? Are there people
yes, there
who
are
able to question?
There are hundreds of people saying, show me the note.
Show me the the note. That's a general thing.
The most important part is.
And if they can't show you the note, what does that mean?
You mean that's it.
And does the court just blink at that, or do they say they just say, "Oh, we don't care," or "We don't"? That's nothing, and they do it.
And okay, well, also
why are the courts able to get away with that by not recognizing the necessity?
Who is bringing the court?
How about some attorney generals of states or people who are?
There's the 50 state attorney generals who were trying to put together a deal with the banks to forgive or to pay for all the underwater mortgages.
Well, underwater is different.
Well, okay.
I'm talking about the bank does not have the proprietary lease they need.
But the people are simply,
a piece of paper.
The people are saying that you don't have standing. Okay, and the deal that they are trying to make with the Attorney General is forget everything. We're just going to make a one lump sum payment, and it covers all things, and nobody else can sue the government, can sue any bank for anything. That's what they've been trying to do.
Say that again. I can't quite understand.
50 state attorney generals.
Yeah, and they vary, and they're elected, aren't they?
Okay, they got together and formed a 50-state task force to deal with mortgage fraud.
Involved all 50 states?
Yes.
Attorney General?
Yes.
Are members of that organization?
Yes.
And what have they done?
Okay, so the deal was that they were going to make a deal with all the banks.
What if one of the Attorney Generals does not want to make a deal but wants to sue the banks? Or wants to take an executive, like Elliot Spitzer was trying to do?
Well, our current Attorney General, Mr. Snyderman, he stepped out of it.
He stepped out of that group.
50 group, yes.
Well, that's one good governor, is it not?
And I believe there's another one. I think, as far as I understand, I think there's two. But the thing was, what was so horrible about it is that they were going to give the people, all people, now, $20 billion.
All the people. Who's all the people? You're talking about the banks, or you're talking about
individuals? The banks were going to give the people who were victims of mortgage fraud $20 billion.
These are the people who, wait a minute, let's get it straight.
Foreclosed
the bank
illegally.
They were foreclosed illegally, or were they actually going and telling the person that they have to pay them money because they had a note that they didn't have, and if they don't have that note, they have no right to tell the person they have to pay them money?
Right, so anything.
Now, that's a very serious threat to the system, is it not?
But the thing is that they will make.
So they want to get around from that.
They want to make a deal to cover everything.
Okay.
Everything, no matter what the accusations were.
What kind of an organization is that? National Governors Association, or where does that come into?
It's a 50 state attorney general.
Yeah, but what's the outcome of that?
Well, right now, I think they're still in discussions with the bank.
So what they're trying to do is bail out the banks for messing up.
Yeah, for 20. But the thing is,
where the banks might be vulnerable. The banks,
$20 billion. How? That's a drop in the bucket.
Okay.
That's not even a day's pay for some of these banks. One day.
Yeah.
For all 12 million.
So they're trying to rescue the banks from the mistakes
and give the shaft to the people again.
And give a shaft to the people again, as always they have.
Yes.
And so they're siding on the side of the rich and powerful against the weak. And now they're also calling in all these debts and that kind of stuff. So what's the status of all that?
Well, right now, as far as I understand, the last time I looked on the internet, it was still in litigation. But there's such a blowback from all the people all over the country saying, no, you cannot do that in our name.
But meanwhile, people are being thrown out on the street.
They continue to be. Look.
And what is the status of the courts in terms of when somebody comes into a court? Let's say it's fraud. I mean, if they come in, it's fraud. If they don't have what they need to come and say you have to pay us money. If they don't have it, they don't have a position, and they still assert that or take money, it's fraud, is it not?
Yes.
Or is it?
Yes, it is.
You
cannot get paid. It's called ill-gotten gains. You cannot get paid for something that you are not entitled to.
Is this a too big to fail thing? Sheila Baird, I saw her on there talking about robo-signing.
Robo-signing is a total different thing. I'll tell you about that. We, the people, feel that you were not too big to fail and you should have failed, and we should have then required you to be broken up.
Well,
because part of capitalism is if you get the profits, then you should pay the pain.
They just took all the profits and put the risk over on society.
That's the problem.
Yeah,
you should have been allowed to fail.
They nationalized the risk and took all the profits.
You should have been allowed to fail, and if you weren't,
and they should be able to get away with it.
They're getting away with it
because they're rich and powerful, and that's the way it always has been. Like the Lord's son. The laird's son can get away with whatever he wants because or the slave master can get away.
Well, listen, there has been no nation that has lived forever.
Yeah.
And all of them meet their day sooner or later.
Okay, so that use of fraud is something, so they're perpetuating fraud.
Yes.
And intimidating, and realize that it seems to me a lot of the people who think about the law and the moral obligation, all that kind of stuff, are in the opinion that that's the way the system works, and they've got their thing in order. They made you a loan, you owe it to them, the system's good, it's got to live up to it, you got to pay it, and if not, well then, okay, I won't do it. But that the courts are backing it up, and what if the courts are bought? Okay, like the politicians are bought.
Let me address
and
that first.
They're all in league with each other, and they're supporting each other in order to support the interests of those who are making money.
Okay, let me.
They made a lot of money on that.
First of all, let's say you get a loan, you apply for a loan, and you don't qualify. Legally, that's where it's supposed to end, right there.
Yeah.
Okay? But if you turn around and say to me, or don't even say to me, listen, I can fix this up so that you can qualify for the loan, that's fraud.
And the banks did that?
Yes. And also, the law says that when the documents pass to the bank, the bank's attorney is required to go through those to verify all of those documents. They are legally accurate.
Right.
So this is where the robo-signing came. There were banks and lending institutions that were writing 10,000 mortgages a month.
Yeah, right.
They could not keep up it.
Also, there was a lot of Walmuth went under, so they were passing those on to other banks. They went through other banks, and they just didn't bother. They did it all cyber. And they didn't bother with the documentation.
They just do what they call drop and drag your signature and put it on pieces of paper. But everyone was saying, Your Honor, this is fraud.
But they didn't send the original documents. They got lost or something.
They didn't get lost, Harold. They were destroyed because what happens is that if you get a note, okay?
Well, now you're saying I get a note, that's for a loan, a mortgage is for a piece of real property. It gets a little confusing.
It's the same thing, a note, the mortgage, a loan. It's, the same word used interchangeably. Okay? So now when you get that note, it says that there's a relationship between me and you, the lender. If you take that note and you turn around and use what's called wet endorse it, means sign it in blue ink, okay, and give it to somebody else, I'm no longer a part of it. Okay. Second thing, if I, for example, there is what's called a servicer. This is the guy that you make your payments to. Okay, he's just like
bill collector.
Exactly.
A bailiff in the old days.
He has no right to do anything to you. Absolutely. Just collect the money. You look in the court, there are plenty of people whose houses are being foreclosed by the servicers.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yes. They have no legal standing, yet they're getting people's property.
Why are the courts allowing that, and why are there not people, Center for Constitutional Rights, or people, or Occupy Wall Street lawyers, or support, or why aren't there people in reaction to this
there are hundreds of people
blatant,
trying.
illegal activity by people who keep the torch of the system?
You look at a single case, okay? But there are thousands of others on the outside.
That's right. Maybe there's too many that would be too threatening. That's what Sheila Bair said on the 60-minute piece about the robo-signing.
Yeah.
It's so big, it can't be allowed because it would bring down the economy. That's what they will claim. Okay. So you got to bail out these people.
No.
What about that argument? That's what Sheila Baird said, FDIC.
Okay, and honestly, I disagree. I feel that if I can get thrown out in the street, you should get thrown out in the street.
No, the king doesn't get thrown out of the castle.
Some kings some kings got beheaded.
Well, they did, didn't they? And Marie Antoinette.
Yes, and we don't have any cake anymore.
So it's a thing. But then the courts are bought. It's an old boys network. Also, I'm wondering, on the other hand, since the Second World War in the United States of America was a miracle, most of the people from the lower classes, economically speaking, or even in the middle and even some upper middle, the way they developed net worth was the appreciation of the one thing that they had that was an asset. They don't own any of the corporate assets, any of the productive capital. It's all owned by a tiny plutocratic class. More concentrated than 1789 France, the ownership of that. 1%, really, and that's where the tax break from Mr. Bush. It all went the upper 100th of 1%, and they don't want to touch that and anything. But it's all there. And the way that they built net worth was by having a residential property whose value went up steady as a rock for about 60, 70 years.
Yes.
It was steady as a rock.
Okay, but let's
right?
Look, yes, but
so then that came to a crash.
Okay, but let's look at what the wealthy people wanted to do. okay, that's being your major asset.
Absolutely,
okay?
that's
okay.
only asset
okay.
they have.
All right.
The
so now
capital assets are all.
I steal your major asset. I reduce your wages.
Yeah.
Okay. Now how and when could you ever buy a home ever again at $7 to $8 to $9 to $10 to $11 an hour? Will you ever be able to?
You can't.
You'll never.
So that they're permanent poor, and they're going to be poorer. And if they learn, and then they can give them moral lessons about how good they are. But that's why we have, among other things, and Lord Keynes said, you're going to have technologically induced massive unemployment. And the only way income gets to people through the legitimate, unquote, system, they have no ownership of the capital assets. Or no way of getting the credit to have ownership in on that beautiful thing. They don't have any collateral or anything like that.
That's only assuming that you're part of the technological development of those assets. People could step out, for example, farmers, little farms, feed, what do you call it?
Organic farms?
Solar energy on your home.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, okay.
Wait. Solar energy on your home, and you could have your own little farm. You could have potatoes, and you can trade. You can reorganize society in a way that people can sustain themselves without having to be part of that technological machine. And that machine. Right now,
but I don't
for example, if there were a major, let's say, slightly earthquake and rattle all the buildings here in New York City, people would be fleeing. And where would they go? They would go back to the hills, to the countryside. It would reorganize society in within days.
You really think it's
possible?
Well, we used to have at the turn of the 19th, 20th century, the most important, the leading occupation was single-family farmer.
Yes.
Everybody was a single family. They had a goat and a cow. But then what happened came combines and things, and it's now 2% of the population could feed the world.
Okay, but
with and I don't think in an urbanized world that you're going to be able to have the family farm as a model.
Okay, but let me tell you something. Right now, world economists are saying that as the world slows down and the advances of the world slows down, what's going to happen is
what's slowing down?
The economies.
Well, the economies are in trouble.
And the production of goods and services, and the ability to acquire them.
Well, no, wait a minute.
Wait a minute. And as that happens, they're saying that all of Europe, most of the third world countries will be better able to adapt and survive than the urbanized industrial country, because there's be no method of goods and services get to them if money breaks down.
Well, okay, but let's hope money doesn't break down. I would hate to see that. That's when Mr. Paulson was arguing the whole. I don't think we'd want to see. You read Naomi Klein at all? Naomi Klein writes really good.
Yes.
She wrote that Shock Doctrine, and she's saying, we want to have a mixed economy, and we want to have a system that works. And I think there's something to be said for that. The people that get hurt the worst when the whole system breaks down are the poor, always.
Well, listen,
those rich will be protected. When you
when you go down to actually what happened in the rural areas during the Great Depression. There were many people jumping out of windows up here while other people were picking up apples off the trees.
Well, okay.
You know, so it depends on what you think a society has to look like.
Well, okay, that is true. That's true.
Another thing. Up until 1940s, here in the United States, everyone's home you had coal, you had wood, you could cook your food, you didn't have centralized heating and gas and all. Today, you can't pay your gas bill, you have no heat and hot water. If you had a little farm, you could have heat and hot water.
Well, maybe people will go back to the farm.
Listen, people are trying.
Well,
but organized labor is primarily trying to harness the people and keep them into the urban area to provide labor for the services of the need.
Right, that's where they all went. I'm in Detroit, and my granddaddy was a labor organizer. In fact, Henry Ford used to tinker in my grandmother's garage when he was 10 years old before he set up the assembly lines at River Rouge. All the people came off the farm, and they, in the 50s, they would have a job there, and they'd send all the kids to college, and everybody had a car every 2 years, and they had a house and they had everything. It was good, but it ain't now. And what's happening, for one thing, the labor input to production is being threatened by technological advancement, and the assets are all owned by a tiny class, And he said, Lord Keynes, he set the whole system up. He was brilliant.
Okay,
in his
but
way.
the whole
said
thing,
you're gonna have
do we have to feed into it?
Well,
do we constantly have to feed in? Do we have to get out of college and rush into New York City and try to get a job? Or is there a possibility that we may go out into the urban area and do little things like personal farming?
Well, people are doing.
People are trying to get back
well, that's
to that.
one way to do it.
That's one way.
And another way to do it.
If you took your labor out of the labor is the people's part of the equation of profit. If you took your labor and did something else to it, the profit margin in there would shrink.
Well, they can displace labor. The technology and the labor unions is only about 5–6% of the private sectors unionized. The unions are down ever since Paplo.
Okay, you displace the labor part. So when you go
well, no, they don't have any ability to get clout to the working class.
They don't have the ability to displace
and so
labor either.
They're going to start bargaining downward on the wages. Okay, or they can go overseas.
Or go overseas. The standard of living is less, but the headaches are less also.
Well, okay, I understand. But one thing we can all look at is the system needs a qualitative change. There's fraud in the hen coop.
Yep.
And there's tough enough in the hen coop normally, but the fraud that's put on top of that has to be addressed by somebody. I'm happy to say that the Progressive Empire State of New York has an attorney general who didn't buy into that little let's get together and bail out the bad guys. You know, that kind of thing, which it seems to be. And we want to cheer the Occupy Wall Street movement that, like, coming out of left field, and it's going all over the world because it's everywhere in the world. The system is totally inadequate and unjust for the massive percentage of the people of the world, and that's got to be addressed.
And the only thing
it's not being addressed by our politicians or our keepers of the flame of the outdated institution.
Disagree with Occupy Wall Street is that when they talk about the housing, they talk about a housing crisis. They should be talking about the criminality of the housing crisis.
Danny Schechter's done well on that. He's saying
the criminality is not being addressed, and that's the part. We need to keep that in front of the people, that we are talking about a criminal conspiracy that defrauded millions of people and put them out on the street. We're not talking about a housing crisis. If you talk about it in terms of how it's very nice and clinically clean. You talk about the criminality, you see the grimy, underhanded, dirty things.
We ought to get a lot of those poor people that are put in prison for smoking a marijuana cigarette and put some bankers in there, maybe, put some, as a thought. And why don't we have a thing like that, a jail out rather than a bailout of them, and giving them all and all of that. So it's going to build to a certain point, and it's just there. So it's a thing. Glad we could show that and encourage it. Thanks for that and educating people. I'm glad you educated yourself with the law library on this issue, and it may grow and so forth. And it's major, and we might get some good cases in the court and so forth. It might begin to move in the right direction in this holiday season. So it might be some little glimmer of hope.
There are a couple very interesting
cases. And this thing, the Occupy Wall Street, is to be celebrated massively. And there's a big tablet to write that equation on of changing everything in a way that's is elementally just and in tune with the future.
Let me tell you one quick.
We only got a few seconds left.
Okay, there's one quick case where
Citibank
tried to settle with the SEC for $285 million. The judge told them, no, you're going to trial for the fraud you committed.
Okay, well, that's good for that judge. Thanks, man.
Thank
you very much.
Harold.
Our pleasure. Randolph Corbett, Gentleman Jim Corbett, Gentleman Randolph Corbett, right?
Absolutely.
Your pleasure. Have a great holiday season this 2011, and thanks again for coming. We'll be coming back again tomorrow. Thanks a lot. Let's definitely stay in touch to do everything we can to set things right.
And I'm going to make sure that I keep you abreast of all the cases that I've run
Thank
across.
you, my brother. Thank you, Consular. Thank you, Consular. Thank you. Happy season to one and all as best possible, and thanks a lot for viewing. We'll see you tomorrow.
Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. Happy Kwanzaa to the entire world.
Yes, indeed. And may Tiny Tim. God bless Tiny Tim. Yeah. And it is getting Dickensian, isn't it? It's getting Dickensian.
Yes,
it really is. Yeah.
Yes.
And that may be interesting because it's an amazing time to be alive.
Yes, it is. And
it's not your normal run-of-the-mill time.
No one thought it was going to happen, that the change was going to come, and that the people were going to be awakened. They just figured for sure that everyone was going to look for a new iPod and a new this and a new...
or it'll go away. Well, remember, there was Spartacus,
yeah,
and there was this guy, Jesus, who tried to say, take care of the least among you, roundly ignored, and Lao Tzu and every wisdom school in the whole history of the universe, all ignored, and everybody's just piling on, getting more money and everything, and all serving those already
breaks.
That's the thing. Does.
It always breaks.
Well, it hasn't broken yet in a way that it may be breaking now in a qualitative way. Okay. Not a little jump, not a new deal, not a little something where you just got all the institutions are out of date systemically, worldwide.
And it's happened, that's the important part.
Yeah, it's an you know what they used to call? They used to call. You know what they used to call the royal families in 1789? They called it ancien regime. It had been in place for 1,000 years, and it's in place, and it's legitimate. It's an ancient regime that our political class is the head of now, and that ancient regime cannot serve in terms of the future.
I think they know that.
It's revolution time.
I think they know that.
Let's go out and make one. All right, thank you. Okay, that might be up on YouTube. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, brother. Have a good season, best possible. Okay, let's go out.